Thank you for joining us today for another edition of Condo Insider. This is our new format because ThinkTech has retired. So Hawaii Council wants to continue on with Condo Insider. So we found a new production company that can carry forward with this, with our journey. We have created our own YouTube channel. So I really think it's going to be easier to find the videos than it was before. So with me today as my guest is Max Copper with the law firm of Porter, Kiakona, and Copper. Have to remember how that goes. PKK. Because Porter McGuire was around for like forever. Like I know from the 90s, you know. So so I'm really glad to have Max on here with us. And we're going to talk about condo meetings, because there's been a lot of emails coming into Hawaii Council. Even other people have been calling and asking me about it. The differences between all the meetings that a condo association can hold, especially there's some condos that are using special meetings versus a regular board meeting. And I was told by one person that the meeting requirements are shorter. And I was like, I don't think so. So I thought we'd bring on Max to kind of go through with it for us so we can kind of clear the air. I'm going to share screen this. Okay. So to start off with, there's two statutes. You have association meetings and you have board meetings, right?
Correct. Thanks, Raylene. Yeah, I really like the distinction you have, even though it seems simple, because that is something I start off with all my board trainings, that there is a total difference between association meetings and board meetings. And the best way to think about it is sort of looking at it from a Robert's Rule standpoint. What is the body that's meeting? What is the group that's meeting here? Association meeting really is a meeting of the association members. It means all the members, all the owners, not just the board members. And the board members have certain rights to chair and everything, but the actions are taken by the individual owners. That's whose meeting that meeting belongs to. Whereas a board meeting is really just a meeting of the board member. The association is not meeting. The board is a different body, a different group that's meeting. Under 514B, owners have certain rights to attend and participate, but the actual group that's meeting and doing the work is the board. And so you really have to distinguish between those two. And you alluded to special meetings, which under association meetings, special meetings are prescribed for in 514B. And this, not to jump ahead too fast, but this is perfect. But for board meetings, although special meetings are contemplated under board meetings, they're mentioned, they're not provided for separately. Now, to jump ahead even quicker, there are many governing documents that do distinguish between this. But for the moment, let's look at first just dividing, like we have on this perfect chart here. We've got association meetings on one hand and regular board meetings and board meetings in general on the other hand. That's the first distinction you want to make, because there's different things that you can do at each. Owners cannot bring motions at regular board meetings, but they can at regular annual meetings.
Wow. Okay. So, at a board meeting, what if an owner is attending, and they have they make a motion, but probably more like it's probably a little bit erroneous. They're really just kind of like doing it to bring attention to an issue. Excellent point. And that happens very frequently, right? Owners, again, meetings are sort of an odd creature, and no one's quite sure how to participate and what they can do. And so, they'll say, they've seen it on TV, okay, I make a motion. And yes, that's improper, but the best thing for the chair to do is to recognize that person. And under 514B, we've had many discussions about the owner participation requirements at board meetings, where owners must be allowed to participate in discussion on any individual agenda item, essentially, in a board meeting. And so I would sort of just direct the owner and say, okay, you're not allowed to make a motion, but I take that as a comment to this ongoing agenda item. Or if it
is not relevant to the current agenda item, say, well, that agenda item's coming up. You'll be allowed to comment and participate in discussion on that when that item comes up. But again, you're allowing them to participate in the discussion, but they don't have a vote in that discussion. So that's the key distinction there.
Okay. So what if it's an item that is not even part of the agenda, and it's something totally brand new that the owner wants to bring the subject matter up? Can it be like, say, okay, can we introduce that for new business?
Yes, so the statute is a little unclear. Back in the old days, most associations would do an owner's forum. We have seen associations kind of do away with that. But if yours still has an owner's forum, that's a great time to bring it up. Otherwise, I would encourage boards to allow new issues to be brought up under new business. Serve as a de facto owner's forum, again with meeting minute rules and time restrictions so it doesn't drag on. But yeah, so owner input is so important to running an association. So that's a great time to do it. Yeah,
because that's a great time for an owner to bring to the attention to the board of something that he or she may not think the board is even aware of. Like they've been noticing, an area of the building kind of started to get a little decay or something. And, it's one of those where you pass by every day, you never notice until someone really points it out. You're like, holy smokes, wow. So those are the kind of things that I've had some discussions with some people like, yeah, we never noticed it before until someone pointed it out to us. And all of a sudden now it stands out,
that's a perfect example. Just you're not asking the board a question, just alerting them to it, and the board, oh, great, thank you, we'll look into it. That'd be the best response from the board. They note it down. The general manager, site manager goes out and investigates it, and then maybe it comes up in the next meeting if an action is required.
Right, and that owner should look to see if it's on the agenda for the next meeting.
Yep.
So he can follow up on that kind of a thing. Okay, so an association meeting, like we all know, we have yearly annual meetings. So that would be where we have the proxies are sent out, things of that nature, and the proxy solicitation. Now we have what we call special meetings. So when some people tell me that about the rules of a special meeting, I said, are you doing a board removal? Because that's what I always know. A special meeting is usually they're doing a board removal. I even had that same conversation with Rachel Gladstein. She goes, yeah, that's what comes to my mind first on a special meeting. So let's talk a little bit about the types of special meetings that can be done.
Yes. So in general, a special meeting is essentially a one or limited item meeting. It is a meeting for a single purpose, and under both Roberts and 514B, only those items on the agenda can be moved upon or discussed at the special meeting. So you gave the example of the removal, and what we mean by that is if the owners petition for the removal of a director, they get so many votes depending on the requirements of their bylaws or CC&Rs, then that will call a special meeting, and then you have to have the requisite votes to actually remove the individual. That is, you are absolutely correct, probably 95% of the special meetings I've seen. So if we take that example, in that meeting, an owner couldn't then pass a motion for a bylaw amendment for, to change the let's say the parking restrictions in the covenants or the other covenant restrictions in the CC&Rs, because it wasn't on that agenda for that special meeting. It wasn't part of that petition. You can have the second most common is for some kind of approval, either loan approval or board amendments. Typically, those are done by written consent, meaning ballot, over the course of the year. But if you have a small enough association and you know you're going to get the requisite quorum requirement, I have seen special meetings be done for that, for specifically approval of a loan, because typically that's only 50% approval, and you don't have time to send everything out, and it may be cheaper and quicker just to call a quick special meeting. You're a small association of maybe 40 units and 20 some odd will show up.
So and those special meetings, because when you do the board removal, everybody needs to realize that there's procedures in doing it. It's kind of a long procedure. You really need to read the statute to make sure you follow those procedures, because if you don't, it'll get kicked back to you. And you don't want that to happen. You want it right the first time. So you need to really pay attention to the statute requirements for special meetings, especially if you're going to do a board removal.
Correct. For board removals, I often see people get the petition correct for the special meeting. And then it often fails because there's usually not enough votes for removal. Usually the removal requires at least 50% of all owners, not just those present. And so you need to make sure you know what, and they don't understand. Owners often don't understand that distinction. They say, well, we got 50% of, we met quorum, got 50% of quorum, but it's easier to get elected than it is to remove.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Okay. And then we had talked about, and it's always going back to what your governing documents state. So there are some associations that will allow them to have special meetings versus regular board meetings. It's in their bylaws.
Yes. So what we just talked about was the difference between regular meetings of the association, annual meeting, and a special meeting of the association. And sometimes that gets confused with a special meeting of the board, especially because, as you pointed out and as we discussed, there's no real provision in 514B for special meetings of the board. Although it does reference, it does say in a regular or special meeting a couple of times of the board. So it doesn't prohibit special meetings, it just doesn't distinguish between them. But some governing documents do. I do have a couple of associations that have a very long notice requirement for a regular meeting, such as 2 weeks, and a very short, 72 hours or less notice requirement for special meetings. Special meetings, just like special meetings of the association, when they are special meetings of the board, are limited to those topic areas listed on the notice and then eventually on the agenda. And so again, you could bring motions if they're germane to the topic on the agenda, but you can't bring totally new motions. So if there's no distinction in your governing documents, just do a regular meeting. It's easier for everybody.
Okay, and then the bottom line is also whenever you're having a meeting, it requires appropriate posting of the notice of the meeting agenda and the posting of the notice requirement, right?
Yes, for any meeting, whether it be a association meeting or a board meeting, 514B and your governing documents are going to be very, very strict about your noticing requirements. And for those members of boards and property managers out there, this is perhaps the second most common complaint that we get for Hawaii RICO violations for failures to follow proper procedures is posting requirements. The first is document requests. That's for another day. But another very common one is that meetings are held without proper notice. And not only does that possibly subject association to a RICO complaint, it also calls into question any vote done in that meeting under Robert's rules and case law in general, that a properly noticed meeting is often, depending on the violation, not valid. And so you get into all sorts of problems if you make a minor error on a posting requirement, the meeting's not valid, and you just, the board got along great, you did a lot of work, everybody's happy, but this technical error reverses everything. So please make sure you consult your general counsel and your property manager for the notice requirements, because they do differ greatly from association to association.
So in 514B, one of the terms that they use when the posting is in prominent locations with an S.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an often overlooked issue. Is often, especially in these smaller locations, they'll just put one, maybe on the corkboard next to the elevator or stairwell or whatever. But multiple postings, posting it online. Bottom line is posting in a method and manner that actually provides notice, right? At the end of the day, if it's challenged, a judge is going to say, well, did people have a reasonable chance to know about it? And a single posting, even for a small association, not only would it violate the plain reading of the statute, but also sort of common sense, right?
Yeah, because I know someone asked me, they go, well, where else would you post? Because normally you're always going to see it by the mailboxes or by the elevator, right? And they go, and so someone asked me, well, where else would we post it? And I asked Michael, well, how many entrances do you have?
Exactly.
You know, how many stairwells do you have? Like when you do a water shut off, where do you post it? Because you got to alert everybody when you're doing a water shut off, right? So where are those locations that you post it? I would probably post them in those same locations, you know?
Absolutely. Consistency is key, right? And other note, if that would be exhibit A, if someone was challenging proper notice posting, say, well, we always hear about the fire drills, the water shutoffs, the construction notices because they post it everywhere. Why can't they do that for meetings? So just be consistent.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of really being really prudent on understanding 514B in the language. I mean, and some people say, well, it's really complicated to read. And I go, I've read it many times. And every time I need to look up something, I got to read it again. Sometimes I read it 2 or 3 times. And I'm like, okay, so I don't think anybody should feel like intimidated or like it's too complicated to read. You just got to read it slowly.
Yes.
I mean, when I first came to Condo, I think I read a couple of them like 3 times before it finally like, okay, I get it, but take a highlighter, just highlight certain words, that really helps. But everybody needs to take the time to read their governing docs and really take a chance to read 514B, mainly the operational part.
Anything in the hundreds, right?
Yeah.
Anything later. For those out there, 514B, yes, it's confusing. It's a dense legal document. I have it printed out every year because it's easier for me to read in paper. And I do exactly what you're talking about, Raylene. I highlight, I read it every day. Issue comes up, I flip to it just to, even for this presentation, I looked at 125, 121, and 124, and just to make sure, oh yeah, it says this, that's how it's phrased. And then the individual phrasing really, really matters.
And it's easy to Google it now than it was before. So you can just Google 514B and it'll come up. Even if you need the particular statute number, if you Google that, it'll come up. I like using the, when the Google comes up, when it references the Capitol website. Yes. That's the most reliable one to me. I don't use the DCCA one because that one is an older version, outdated version. Mm-hmm. So, but it's part of our fiduciary duty as board members and as condo owners because you bought into this. You bought into this organization that you have ownership rights. So I really feel it's really important for owners to really get involved and then kind of understand, and not deep down, but at least the basics, to get started on it. So just a little advertisement is we have our board of director training that's in July. It's 2 Saturdays, the 13th and the 20th. And it's going to be full of information. It's going to be from like 9 o'clock in the morning till about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's going to be a full day, but it's going to be a well worth day. This is, I think, our 7th year of doing this.
Excellent.
So when we first started, we did it in 1 day. I think after 2 years, everybody said, we need it in 2 days. Even the speaker said, we need it in 2 days. So we've been doing it for 2 days now. And we're also we did a slight change. We normally do our law update on a separate seminar, but this time now we're going to be including law update with our board of director training. So that people can just come to just that law update part, and that's going to be a separate separate fee for that part of it. But
I think that's wonderful. I really encourage people to go to trainings that like these, Condo Insiders or HCCA seminars. They're wonderful because, 514B, you kind of need to see it 10 times and hear it 10 times in 10 different ways before it clicks. And even myself constantly attending, presenting, you learn something new every time, or it clicks every time, and then maybe you forget it, but you get reminded of it because there's so much in 514B. But everybody at your events are so positive, and we're all in it together. Whether you're an owner or an attorney, yes, some may think that's adversarial, but no, we're all trying to figure out how to allow 200 people to live together in a building harmoniously as possible and as cohesively as possible. So it's really great what you guys do.
And everybody has to realize that it's coming down the road where it may become mandatory. So we kind of get into, we have to get into the groove, because I have a feeling that it might eventually become mandatory. I mean, there's only 8 states that require it right now. And even for property managers, they require them to be licensed in 8 different states, and they have to pass a test. I'm like, oh, licensed, test. I know those can be really hard to pass, but everybody needs to get used to attending the seminars, because it's coming down the road. I'm sure like 3 years down the road from now, it's going to start to be implemented.
I would agree with that. I would take that bet. Yeah.
So, Max, I really appreciate you joining me today on this segment of Condo Insider, our new format. And I hope to see you again real soon.
Thank you, Raylene. That was wonderful. I really appreciate everything you guys do and your time today. It was fun.
Thank you so much, Max. I appreciate it. See you again. Aloha, everybody. Check us out on YouTube. Our own YouTube channel will be nice. Thank you.